Continuing on with our circuit building here, let's take the last circuit that we drew a schematic with and built in the last couple of videos and just play around with it a little bit using some of the different components we have in our parts drawer. So the first thing we're going to add onto this circuit here, experiment with this so-called photocell here. Recall from a previous video, this is a resistor whose resistance depends on how much light hits it. And the next thing we'll sort of get out of our parts drawer also is a potentiometer, which recall is a resistor whose resistance along any of the two outer terminals, both the center and the right one or the center and the left one, depend on the angular position, how much this thing has been turned. And so what we've done with the potentiometer is we've taken some of our clip leads and clipped them on there so we have the other ends ready to go. We can clip them into a circuit wherever we want, and let's just get going and see what we get. So what I've done is I've taken that circuit here and I've just introduced a little gap in the circuit right here. So I've introduced a little bit of space between where the current would flow out of the resistor and into the LED, and I've got the flat edge of the LED over here. So even though the battery is connected, of course, nothing's happening because the circuit isn't complete. There's a big gap in here. But what I want to do then is why don't we put the photoresistor to bridge that gap. So I'm going to take one end of the photoresistor, put it into the same column where the resistor current would come out, the other end that would feed the LED, and let's see what happens. So I'll put it in there just carefully here, and we see that the LED comes on as we think. But now what about this idea that the photoresistor has a resistance that varies as much as light hits it? I mean, what are we seeing here? We're seeing the current come out, flow out of the red wire into the resistor, out of the resistor into the photocell, out of the photocell into the LED, so the LED is on, then back out around the battery. I do have a complete circuit, and I know I do because the LED is on. But now look, watch what happens when I hold my finger in front of the photocell. See, the LED gets dimmer. Let me turn off some of the room lights here. And there's the LED, so I can put my finger in front of it. See, it gets very dim there. Then it gets lighter again. Dimmer and lighter. So see, if I sort of wave my hand around, it's going to be hard to see. So it gets a little dimmer there, dimmer still, and a bit brighter again. And if I hit it with a flashlight here, the LED gets even brighter right there. See, the LED is getting brighter. So indeed, we are limiting the flow in the LED, hence its brightness, by the variability of light that hits the photocell here. So we are seeing the resistance of the photocell change with light intensity, and we can see that manifested into the ultimate brightness of the LED. So I'll take that out. And now let's replace it with the potentiometer here. That's the resistor whose resistance changes depending on how much we turn it. So remember the way I've wired it up here. What I'm going to do is, I won't really use the breadboard for this because I have these clip leads. I'll take one of the clip leads here and put it right onto the output of the resistor right there. That's going to take the current. And sure, it's delivered to the breadboard, but it's also going to be routed to the potentiometer because this position of the breadboard isn't connected to anything else. So all the current that flows out of the resistor will flow through the potentiometer. And I'll connect the other side to that input lead on the LED like that. So the LED is lit. Now if I take the potentiometer here, just hold it, if I turn it now, watch what happens to the LED. Brighter, brighter still, and dimmer, brighter and dimmer. Now the camera is pretty sensitive, so the LED looks kind of bright all the time. But in fact, as I'm watching here, as I'm doing this, it's much dimmer now that I see it than it would be than you can see on the camera. So what I've essentially done here is by varying the resistance, by turning this knob here, I've sort of made a light dimmer, haven't I? Because if I increase the resistance of the potentiometer to its maximum value here, the LED is as dim as possible. And again, the camera's kind of sensitive, so it still looks bright. And if I decrease the resistance, the LED gets even brighter, and so I've made a light dimmer here. So that's just a couple of variations on that simple circuit that we made. If you want some sort of challenge for yourself, maybe you could try to build this dimmer here. Put the switch in there too, so you have on, off, and dimming variability.